Shortly after the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, rebellions erupted across the Arabian Peninsula against the first Caliph, Abu Bakr. However, Abu Bakr swiftly crushed these uprisings under the brilliant leadership of General Khalid bin Walid. Once more, the entire Arabian Peninsula was united under the governance of Medina. But here's where the story gets a bit tricky. Islam was no longer just an Arab religion. It is evolving into a worldwide religion. And with Muslims poised to become the world's greatest superpower, Abu Bakr had crushed all rebellions and united the entire Arabian Peninsula under his control. However, Arabia was still a desert, and it was a very poor region. And even after the entire Arab world united, it couldn't become a superpower. The real superpowers at that time were beyond Arabia, the Roman and Persian empires. These were both massive and ancient empires that dominated the world. From the very beginning of Islam, when Muslims were very weak, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, repeatedly stated, even in the face of such difficult circumstances, that one day they would conquer both the Roman and Persian empires. The people of Mecca often mocked him for these claims. However, just a few years later, the state of Medina was poised to challenge these two superpowers. While the Muslims were gradually settling in Medina after the migration, the Roman and Persian empires were engaged in a fierce war with each other. This intense conflict weakened both empires significantly, leaving them no longer as strong as they once were. And due to constant warfare with each other, both superpowers had become quite weak, providing a golden opportunity for Muslims to defeat them once and for all. These empires posed the greatest threat to Islam. For example, the Roman Emperor Heraclius had tried to annihilate the Muslims in the battles of Mu'tah and Tabuk. However, despite these threats, Hazrat Abu Bakr launched the first attack not on the Roman Empire, but on the Persian Empire. A few years prior to this, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had sent letters to all the kings of the world, inviting them to Islam. The worst response came from the Persian king, Khosrau, who arrogantly tore up the Prophet's letter. However, after tearing up the Prophet's letter, Khosrau himself was assassinated by his own son. But after a short time, the son's army chief removed him from the throne and became king himself. Then the others together removed him from the throne and made a woman queen. Then she was also removed, and someone else was brought in her place. Then he was also removed, meaning that within a very short period, 10 kings of Persia were changed. Due to all this, the Persian government had become very weak compared to the other. The Muslim leader, Abu Bakr, was well aware of this. So without any delay, he made two major decisions: that only those Muslims who volunteered for this jihad would be part of the army attacking Persia, and those who did not want to fight would not be forced. The second decision was that he sent a letter to his best commander, General Khalid bin Walid, saying that after defeating Musaylimah in the Battle of Yamama, he should not return to Medina, but should take his army towards the Persian Empire. So Khalid bin Walid, along with 18,000 Muslims, set off towards Iran, the Persian Empire. The area that Khalid bin Walid went to conquer is known as Kuwait today. Khalid bin Walid wrote a letter to the Persian general saying, either accept Islam or be prepared to pay the jizya, a tax imposed on non-Muslims. Otherwise, you will be responsible for whatever happens next, because I am bringing to you men who love death as much as all of you love your lives. But, of course, they did not listen. After that, Khalid ibn Walid entered Persia, Kuwait. The governor of Kuwait sought help from his king, Persian emperor. But the Persian king thought that the Arabs were not capable enough to fight against the mighty Persian Empire. So, he did not give much importance to the Muslim army and did not help his governor with an extra army. Iran was not a small empire. Rather, it has been one of the world's greatest superpowers for thousands of years, perpetually at war with the Roman empires of the West. And the Arabs, for thousands of years, never had the courage to stand up to these great empires, because before Islam, the Arabs were never united. Muslims benefited greatly from the mistake of the Iranian king, and 18,000 Muslims set out towards the first city, Kazima, with full speed. Seeing this, the governor of Kuwait also marched with his army of 30 or 40,000 towards the same city where the Muslims were headed. However, as soon as his entire army arrived, they found that the Muslims had already reached a different city. Ufair, the governor of Kuwait, then turned back towards the same city. As soon as his army reached Ufair, Khalid bin Walid leading the Muslims, returned to the first city, Kazima, and they all rested there. Then the governor of Kuwait once again led his entire army back towards Kazima. However, as soon as his army, completely exhausted, reached, they saw that the entire Muslim army was ready and waiting for them. Because of this, the Persian army did not get any time to rest. This was all due to Khalid bin Walid's brilliant planning that the Persian army was exhausted before the battle, so much so that they were unable to fight at the time of the battle. There was a huge difference between the Muslim army and the Persian Empire's army. The Persian Empire was a superpower, and their army was considered the best in the world. However, due to being such a professional army, their body armor and equipment were always very heavy, which made it very difficult for their army to move from one place to another. In contrast, the Arab army was not a professional army, but simply ordinary Muslims, and their armor and equipment were very simple and light, which made their speed much faster than other armies. Khalid bin Walid was sharply aware that if we were to defeat the Persian Empire, we could never match them in terms of numbers or brute strength. We would have to rely solely on our speed and tactics. Finally, the Persian and Muslim armies faced each other for the first time in history. The Persian general stepped forward from his army and issued a challenge to Khalid bin Walid, the Muslim general, for a one-on-one duel. The Persian soldiers cheered, but as they watched, a towering figure, nearly 7 feet tall, emerged from the Muslim ranks. His sword drawn, Khalid bin Walid went to fight the Persian general. However, 2 men suddenly joined from the Persian army and stood with their general. Despite this, Khalid bin Walid, with the help of only one other Muslim, defeated all 3 of them. Subsequently, both armies engaged in battle. Initially, the fighting was intense. However, the Persians, without a general, were fighting against the Muslims, who were led by one of the greatest generals in human history, Khalid bin Walid. Eventually, the Muslims defeated the Persians and conquered the entire region. The Persian king sent another army against the Muslims, but Khalid bin Walid and the Muslims defeated them as well. As a result, the very important Persian province of Kuwait came under the control of Abu Bakr. For the first time, Islam began to spread beyond Arabia and become a global religion. Today, there are 2 billion Muslims in the world, and it is said that not a single second passes in this world without the call to prayer, Adhan, being recited somewhere in the world. But how did Islam become such a large religion? This is something that's very important for us all to understand. So, subscribe.